Hello everyone, my name is Andrew, and in this presentation I will showcase a research article that I have found to be quite interesting. Recently you may have noticed that Bitcoin has been on the rise, and you may have seen images like this on websites. What do these all have in common? If you guessed cryptography, you are right. There is information out there that must be kept hidden from others who may use it for nefarious purposes, especially with military intelligence in case it ever gets released. This concept of jumbling information as well as unscrambling to retrieve information is known as encrypting and decrypting, and throughout time many different tools and processes have been developed to accomplish these tasks. So the title of this research article is Mathematics in the History of Cryptography, written by Charles F. Rocca Jr. Despite this being in an academic journal, it is more of an instructional guide for teaching math history, or at least a small portion of it. The whole goal is to present the subject in a way that is more approachable and friendly to the general public, explore a bit of history, and show ways that it can be taught to make the teaching experience that much more productive. Now most of this paper is split up into sections and each is numbered individually, so let's look into each part one at a time. Part 1 is quite short and it discusses the Caesar cipher. Today these are popular puzzles for kids and they are quite simple. All that was done is a shift in the alphabet, so a shift in 3 would be 3 letters in either direction to encrypt a message, and to decrypt you would just move 3 letters in the opposite direction. As you might have guessed, it got its name from the two well-known Roman emperors Julius and Augustus Caesar, and this cipher was one of the earliest examples that we know about. However, this is just one of the many to come. The author praises the idea of teaching this type of lesson, but also highlighted concerns of potential conflicts with present and past sentiments toward the subject, as well as the fear of oversimplifying the material. Now, Part 2 explains the historical nature of the subject. One example of a tool that was used in ancient Greece was the Scytale. The Arabs used cryptology and Thomas Jefferson developed the wheel cipher to write sensitive documents. Now, this is interesting because Jefferson wasn't the only president interested in the subject. As we have learned in the class, President James Garfield published his own proof of the Pythagorean theorem in 1876, making his contribution to math. Now, you might be wondering how ciphers and math are connected, especially with the examples presented so far. Later on, we will see a transition to more mathematical concepts, and with it the complexity increases. Some topics mentioned in the paper include basic probability and statistics, greatest common divisors, and number theory. Regardless of if you understand any of the topics on screen or not, you can at least agree that there are quite a lot of ways to sort numbers, and if you choose, you could convert them back into letters, or associate some numerical value to them. All these concepts used have historical roots, with Euclid's number theory and his study of prime numbers to be a big influence. Now, Part 3 asks the question, what must be done? There's a lot of emphasis on how to make an effective curriculum, and this long section will give us some practical examples on how to do just that. If we gather up all the data that we need, this will help us make an effective lesson. Now, there are 3 examples, so I'll just briefly discuss them. In the first lesson, 8th to 14th century Arabic works are looked into. Now, the Arabs were covered in quite some detail in our class, and this sample curriculum is as follows. We focus on the vocabulary and then the ancient history revolving this area of brilliance. The Arabs discovered linguistical patterns and they substituted Arabic numerals for letters. This led to a substitution in multiplicative ciphers, which are quite complex in comparison to the Caesar ciphers used before. The second lesson plan jumps us up ahead in time, all the way to the 17th century in England. Lots of cryptological advances were made, including how to break monoalphabetic ciphers, which are simply just mixing up the letters, as you can see. We use the top row, pick our letters, and then use the lower row to get our jumbled message. Works in English finally appeared, and John Falconer had many unique ciphers of his own. In this book, he showed off a lot of different solutions to the same set of information, making it very easy to follow. One method involved a tabular cipher. While complicated to explain, by using math techniques and pattern recognition, they can be solved with relative ease and with enough practice. The final lesson explains that the field of cryptographic research is largely based on math at this point. Lester Hill created a cipher named after himself, and this Hill cipher involves associating numbers with integers, and these integers then get treated with modular arithmetic. The Euclidean algorithm is used here, and while not specifically mentioned, it has ties to Euclid's Elements, a very famous publication throughout history. Despite the abstract nature and complex calculations involved, it still has a big vulnerability, and provided you have the correct key, decrypting takes no time at all. After the conclusion, there is a discussion about the author in a reference section, wrapping up the article. Despite never really going into a lot of detail for modern applications, cryptography and encryption is an ever-present technology used in our daily lives. From simply sending a message on your phone or making a purchase online, an encryption process is used. Very large prime numbers are very difficult to work with and can be great as keys to decode media and data. We live in a much more modern society, but the same concept of making sure information gets transmitted and received securely and quickly is just as important as it ever was. Thank you for all for stopping by to listen, and the link to the original paper will be in the description if you are interested in checking it out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.